Hit it.
Danine Clay, welcome to the Left of Boom show.
Thank you, Phil. Thanks for having me.
This is a momentous day in the history of the Left of Boom show because somehow this is the first time I've had you on as a guest. I know you've done at least one other episode, but this is the first one we've done together. So I'm excited to get to do this one. So today's episode is on recruiting and onboarding. So hiring and onboarding new people. And for companies that have been through a union election, first of all, a lot of them have hiring problems. So why don't we start a little bit with just like what are the cultural challenges that companies that go through elections have related to sort of the team that they have on board and then the team that they're bringing on board?
So specifically after a union election, your team is going to be divided. So half of your team is very excited over the outcome and half of your team is very disappointed. So you're going to have those two that need to come back together and become whole. So anytime you're adding someone new to that changes the dynamic even further. And so it just makes it even more complicated.
Yeah. And there's, it's not uncommon for people that were disappointed with the election result to leave. You sometimes have a number of roles that you're recruiting for, like right off the bat. And then, like you say, kind of getting folks integrated in that environment also becomes a big challenge. So you've got a lot of experience. Like you've run a business. You're running our business as well. You've worked as a consultant. So what are some of the things that you have seen in your career as like best practices as far as bringing in people, and then some of the mistakes that you've seen companies make?
Sure. So as far as best practices, I would say one of the first and foremost things for me, at least, is transparency. And I would definitely make sure that anyone that was coming into the company knew what they were walking into. I would not hide the fact that we just, we won a union campaign. And I would also make sure that they were very aware of the company's position on unions. So making sure that there was a clear, concise statement about it and that this was something that was publicly known. And then also just making sure that the expectations of that individual as far as what they're walking into, as well as their job requirements, are definitely spelled out for them in advance.
Yeah. And so Nick Calm and I did an episode that was all around this, like when do you say the U word and when do you talk about unions? And a big part of that, it depends on the company, but a company that's just gone through a union election, like you just said at the start, right? There's a group of people that thought the union was a good idea. They didn't convince enough of their peers to go that way, but they're probably going to approach a new person and feel them out on the union question.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. So for a company that's like that, you want to make sure that it's clear, like, hey, we've just been through an election. We want to work directly with our team. This is, the kind of environment we want to have. And like that is an important thing to get across right off the top.
And also the why behind it, not just this is where we are, but also help them understand why this is important to us and why it even was an issue in the first place. So that when they come in, they can embrace, a feeling about it, and preferably the feeling that the company is also supporting.
Yeah. Yeah. And it also gives the company an opportunity, I think, to be transparent, as you said, about, look, we've made mistakes, but we are like super committed to our culture. And these are some changes that we've made. We'll get into kind of how do you run your hiring process, but these are some things that we do to make sure that that direct relationship culture, is protected and preserved. And, these are the things that we're doing to, as I say, like earn that privilege of getting to work directly with you.
Exactly. We're modeling the trust that we're trying to build.
Yeah. So let's start talking a little bit about tactics. All right. Okay. So what are some of the best practices? Why don't we start first with the recruiting side? So you're trying to attract, new talent into the organization. What are some tips that you've got for companies that, especially ones that have kind of been through, a union election? What are some tips that you have for hiring and like recruiting in new people?
So probably the best way for me to talk about is to talk about what we're doing here at LRI. We go through a process where we try to find the right person for the right seat. And so one, we have to have an actual position, and we analyze the person to see whether or not they are the right fit for those job responsibilities. And we try to evaluate the person based off of our own core values and how they mesh with our core values. So for a company, I would strongly encourage them to look at their mission, their vision statement, as well as their corporate policy, if they have one on unions, see if that individual meshes and gels and also embodies many of the same values that they're trying to have for the company itself, as well as for all their employees.
I always feel like it's important. You're a lawyer and I am too. It's important to just make clear you cannot select based on whether or not somebody thinks a union is a good idea, or even, in some cases, they'll even outright say like they want to organize a union at your location. You need to be really crystal clear that that's not what we're trying to
No,
select on, right?
no.
We're trying to select around, are you a good fit for this both culture, and then are you a good fit for this role, or like we call it seats, but are you a good fit for this seat? And I think you make a great point. Like, how clear are we even about what are what the seat is that we're hiring for? A lot of companies don't do a great job of even, putting that on paper and making
Mhm.
really crystal clear. Like, this is the accountability for this particular individual. And do I think that the resume that I have in front of me is got the skill set to do those accountabilities?
And I think another key point is also to consider the individuals that you already have hired. Is this
Hmm.
person going to mesh well with the individuals that are there?
Hmm.
Because you want a cohesive team that is going to grow stronger and develop further. And so if you know that you're looking at someone that is, say, confrontational or that is going to clash with your existing population, then that isn't necessarily the right person for that seat, even if they have the qualifications for the position.
Yeah. A book that I would highly recommend around this, and the process, if you do read the book, you're going to be like, this is crazy. It's way too much. But it's Top Grading, and I will put in the show notes the author. I think it's Jeffrey Smart, but if
Okay.
I'm wrong, Michael will correct that. But Top Grading has a really extensive interview process. It's a very structured process. Now, it takes a long time. I think for many positions, it's maybe not realistic, but I still encourage you to read the book, because
Mhm.
the philosophy behind it and the effort that they put into making sure that we've selected the right person, I think is really, really valuable. And there are definitely components of that process that could apply to any hiring process, even if it's for a frontline, generalist type position. So I think that's a good place to start. But I would ask you, so here, what are the things that we do? So we interview people, but like, what are some of the steps that you have to go through to get a job here? And like, how does that relate to
Sure.
someone who's gone through a union election?
So the first step, of course, is just looking at the qualifications. So if you don't have the qualifications, then you wouldn't necessarily be the right person for that particular seat. And then if you do have the qualifications, you advance to the next level. And then it's usually a smaller group of individuals that have a verbal interview with you where you get a feel for who this person is, how this person might gel with the rest of your staff, what type of person you're really dealing with. And then also how, depending on the position, how articulate the individual is, all those types of things. And then if they advance on, then we do a full team core values presentation. And that is where the candidate is given our core values, and then they're asked to present to us how they correspond or how their life kind of incorporates our core values. And
Hmm.
that way we're able to see the person as an individual, and we're able to see how they reflect what we're trying to model, because we have built an exceptional, in my opinion at least, an
Hmm.
exceptional culture here at LRI. We have more of a team family approach to things. And so we want to make sure that we're continuing that as well as setting the person up for success. And so if the person did not jive with our core values, then they wouldn't be the right person for that particular seat. But when
Hmm.
they do, it's a win for all of us.
Yeah, I love that part of our process. It's something we do not just for our internal hires, but also our consulting team that we partner with. They are also, we ask them to do core values presentations. It's just a really important part of what we do. And there's a few reasons for it, right? It's like you said, it helps helps us understand, is this person going to fit culturally? And you'll hear a lot of people will say, like, you can learn jobs. The culture fit is something that is much less likely to be, well, I didn't think that they were a very good culture fit, but we can work through that. That doesn't happen, right? So really indexing on, is this person going to be a good fit with the team, I think is very important. And then you go to, like, the table stakes are sort of, can they do the role?
I agree.
So that I feel like that is something that a lot of companies don't do. You mentioned the interviews, but normally you interview with more than just one person on the team. So that gives us a couple of different looks and opinions from a couple of different people. And I think that's an important part of a process. And to be honest, just having a number of steps that people go through is also just important, whatever the steps are.
It shows whether or
Maybe
not you're
talk about
committed.
that.
It shows, I think going through different steps in a process also shows whether or not you're truly committed, because you also want someone who wants to be there, who isn't just going for a job just for a paycheck. Because there are many things and many times when you're putting in more than just, you're putting in your heart and soul sometime into a position, and you want someone who's willing to give that, as opposed to someone who just, again, it's just collecting a paycheck. And so by going through the steps, you can see, is this person dedicated to it? Does this person really want it? How diligent is the person? How timely is the person?
Steps, right? It's
Yeah,
like,
the different steps
can
you have
they,
to go through.
yeah.
Exactly. And so I think it's very valuable. I think sometimes companies can do too much, to be honest with you. So I think there's a very delicate balance that you have to weigh. So you don't want them to create a dissertation for you in order to get a position, but at the same time I don't see any problem with them jumping through some hoops.
Yeah, we're probably right on the edge of that line, but I feel like the other part of it. So you're right, like showing, can they follow a number of steps? Are they punctual about doing that? Sometimes people will drop out of the process because they're like, this isn't for me, and that is a good thing, right? The other thing I would say about it is, when you make it through that, and we've had a number of folks on our team, and we certainly have clients that do the same thing, where you feel like, this is a place that's hard to get a job at, and they picked me, so I'm top tier, and I think that is a really valuable thing as well.
I agree. I think one of the mistakes many companies are doing right now is they're just so eager to get a warm body into a position, that they're not taking time to find out if this warm body is the right warm body for this particular position. And we need to take a pause and take that time and actually make sure that this is the appropriate individual for the culture that we have in our organization.
Yeah. Just one other quick story that, I had a client that I talk about this in the book, but they would have the finalists for a position build a swing set together, and then they would donate the swing set to schools in the community. And their business was not building swing sets. Swing sets had nothing to do, there wasn't a particular, power tool that you were using when building it that you're also going to use in the job. The whole point of it was to watch this group of people interact as a team, and you can't really fake that. Right. So, like, you can answer the questions. That's why we do multiple rounds of interviews, and you can fake your way through for a while, but there's certain situations that you can put people into where you're not going to be able to hide. And I'm not suggesting that needs to be, everyone who's listening, like, that's your process, but what's your version of doing that, where you can put folks in a situation where they're maybe competing a little bit, but also they're showing culturally, like, how would they fit?
And it's funny you mentioned that, because I actually almost raised that part of our process when we're doing our core values is we also expose vulnerabilities, our own vulnerabilities, as well as, honestly, fortunately, the team is also very open and vulnerable with the candidate. They will ask questions, and often one of the questions that a candidate will ask is, why LRI? What makes LRI the place for you to work? And that's when our team has an opportunity as well to, really expose their vulnerability. So again, it's not for everybody, but if you have some sort of process where you can truly look at the individual and evaluate the individual, I think it's going to be an asset to you in the orientation process. I mean, in the hiring process.
Yeah. Okay, great. So I think, so that's like the recruiting bucket, bringing people on board. And my last thing I would just say to put a pin on that is you should look carefully at your hiring process, especially if you've just come through a union election. There's probably some gaps in the way you're bringing people on board, and you should close those gaps now because you have a year of people that you're going to be hiring, and you want to make sure that they are the right people getting into the right seat. And this is something you want to do very early in your year, not at the end of the year. So you recruit them. Now the onboarding part, let's talk a little bit about what are your, what's your experience, or what advice would you have for companies around bringing that new person on board?
So for me, onboarding is one of the most crucial parts of it because you're setting the stage. You are setting basically the path of what the rest, or at least the beginning of the person's career is going to be like. And so I think with the onboarding process, again, transparency is very key. Making sure that there has been some thought behind what are the true expectations. So the person will know when they go in for day one, here's what I'm going to be required to do. Here's what my day is going to look like. And so there are no surprises. And then if they have questions, they have an opportunity to ask those questions so that when they come in, they're comfortable and they're able to be a complete person and interact with the team and grow and learn them.
It's also a really important time to get them used to the things, the walk of your talk about wanting to have a direct relationship, right? So they don't just talk to their first line supervisor. They should be talking to their first line supervisor, and the first line supervisor should check in. But you should also have, another higher level manager, HR, and then ideally even some of the best onboardings that I'm aware of, the very top individual in the company comes in, and if you have a group that's onboarding at the same time, like they come in and talk about things like the core values, like continuing to reinforce how important that is. I think those are tips.
And also giving them an opportunity to provide feedback or comments or questions, because a employee also wants to be heard. And so you need to make sure that during the orientation process, you're allowing them from the onset an opportunity to have a voice as well.
Yeah, right. And that's all just proving that we walk our talk, right? Like the flip side, what are some things that you've seen that are, hey, this is not the way to onboard somebody? What have you experienced around that?
Well, if you just take someone and you give them a whole bunch of paperwork, or you plug them into a computer and say, fill out or take all these compliance tests and everything like that, and you're not talking with them, you're not interacting with them, you're not engaging with them, you're just throwing things at them and then expecting them to absorb it all. And then they walk into their first day and they're like, what's going on here? Yeah. Who am I even to talk to? That type of thing.
Yeah.
I think that is one of the worst things that you can do.
Yeah. They point you to your workstation and are like, okay, go work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I also think it's really important for the team, whatever the work team is that this individual is going to be on, like they need to have a chance to embrace that person, to, talk to that person, to make sure that they're available to answer questions and things like that. I think that's also really important.
And also even be made aware of that person, because sometimes a new hire will walk in and the team doesn't even know that there's going to be a new hire. So that communication piece is also very key.
Companies that have been through union elections often have really high turnover, and high turnover, I mean, first of all, that's a symptom of, of a lot of other problems, right? But one of the things that happens if you have a high turnover environment is people don't want to invest in that new hire that's probably not going to be here in 3 months anyway. Like, why do I even need to know their name? This is like the fifth person that's been in the department, this year. So you really have to try to like stop that, right?
I agree.
You need the team invested in this person succeeding. And the best way to do it, like, you have to get them together, right? And
Yes.
that's how you do it.
You do. You do.
Mhm.
You have to get them together. You have to get them interacting with each other. If you can do a team building activity with them, that'd be great. Or even another great thing that we do a lot is share a meal
Mhm.
and talk with one another, you
Yeah,
know?
right. And not, and not about work if we can avoid it,
Exactly.
right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So,
great. All right. So that's like the onboarding bucket. We already talked at the beginning about you. I think it's really important for organizations in this particular spot to make sure you're clear about, we want to earn the privilege of being able to work directly with you. And
mhm,
here's all the different ways. If you've got a concern or a complaint or a suggestion, like, here's all
mhm,
the different ways that you can talk to us, that we'll receive all of that.
mhm.
Really emphasizing that over and over during the onboarding process, I think is really valuable.
I agree.
Now, let's talk a little bit about pay and benefits. So there's a common feeling that, well, the solution to the problem of our union campaign is we just need to, like, give people raises and maybe pump up the benefits a little bit, and, like, that'll solve all of our problems.
Mhm.
Comment a little bit about your thoughts on that.
So, of course, being paid reasonably for your services is very important to every employee. We all want to be compensated justly. But often it's not the pay and benefit that is the breaking point. It's more the culture, it's more the communication, it's more of the interaction, it's more of the feeling around working where you're working as opposed to what you're actually getting paid. So although pay and benefits are important, and I think that fair market rate is something that everyone should be looking at
Hmm.
all times and reevaluating to make sure that you are paying a fair wage. But I also think that culture is far more important than that. And that's where the emphasis should be on.
I refer to this research in the Left of Boom book, but the whole thing about, pay and benefits. First of all, this person just accepted a job knowing what the pay and benefits were. All
Exactly.
right. So, like, you've already proven that your offer is at least attractive enough to get them to
Uh-huh.
take the role.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So you're not, the Hertzberg's research was called pay and benefits hygiene factors, right? So if the pay and benefits are really below market, like you're talking about, like, where I feel like this is a slap in the face, these are way below market wages,
Right.
yes, you are going to have a problem,
Right.
right? And
Right.
if that is your situation, shame on you, and you should fix that.
Agreed.
But at the point that you're at market rate or a little above market rate, you don't get any extra benefit by paying higher than that or raising benefits more than that. And the reason is, what you just said. That is not, that's table stakes. You've already
Mhm.
accepted the pay and benefits. It's the other stuff that is
Right.
way more important in terms of
Right.
motivators.
Right.
And the Hertzberg research, talks about things like, development and growth, and what does my career trajectory look like, and do people listen to me, or my suggestions considered, like, that's the stuff that motivates people.
And if an employee is happy, they're far less likely to ever either complain, leave, or say that
Mhm.
they need a greater salary, in all
Yeah,
honesty.
right. And again, you don't, this isn't the way that you manage, but there are a lot of companies where the pay, it's in a very competitive marketplace. The pay, you can't really compete on pay and benefits anyway, and everyone is sort of paying at around the same level. And that if you were to, like, pay above that, you would have a hard time surviving as a
Mhm.
business.
Mhm.
There's lots and lots of people that work in those companies that love their company, right?
Yes.
There's lots of really hard jobs that
Yes.
people do, that people love their company.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. It's
And I think that's when I said we have a unique culture here, that's one of the things that works here. I'm not saying that our pay isn't great because our pay is fine, but I'm also saying that we love coming to work every day. And with that, we're happy to be here. We're happy to tell others that you should try to work here. It's a great
Mhm.
place to work. And when you have that environment and that culture, then it's a win for you.
Yeah, right. Well, and we work hard, you work hard to make sure that that is what our culture is like. But it's an effort, right?
It
You have to
is.
work at it every day.
You do every
Yeah.
day. And we all have to do it. It's not
Mhm.
just you or me it's everybody in the organization has to work on that.
Yeah. Yeah. What are some of the first things that you would do? So someone has just kind of gone through their union election and they're putting together their project map for what they're going to do over the course of the next year. What would you say in this hiring and onboarding bucket? What are like the top 2 or 3 things that should be on that list?
Sure. So one, I would say I would take a look at our process. I would
Oh,
see whether or not our process is actually outlined, whether or
mhm.
not, how are we communicating? How are we discussing what's truly important to us? How are we communicating our culture? Are we doing it at all? How are we making sure that this candidate, this new hire, is able to communicate not only with their team, but also their frontline supervisor, as well as other higher ups, levels of communication? And then is it all spelled out? And then are we setting a clear expectation for that individual? So when they start, they know what they're getting into. They know what to expect. There are no surprises. We're setting them up for success. And so that is where I would start the process,
Mhm.
because uh, we clearly had some issues, which got us into a union campaign in the first place. And we were successful. So now we have to heal with the people that are there, as
Mhm.
well as make sure we're creating an environment where others will want to come in and where they can excel.
Yeah. I'll just add one other thing. I think that like just super good advice. I also think if you do have turnover, take advantage of that. Like
Mm, good point.
first of all, why did that person leave? Right. Try to get some
Exit
sort of
interviews.
exit interview. Right. Get the data about like why are people leaving.
Mhm.
So that's like an important part. Another part is if people are rejecting your offer or they're like falling out of the hiring process, you can also gather data from them, right? Why did you
Turn us
not go
down.
through the process, right? And this is sort of a little bit of customer service research, but like these are customers who fired you. Like why did you fire us? So
Uh-huh.
that I think is another good place to really kind of learn more about yourself. But the suggestions you make are super valuable. Dean, thank you
Thank you, Phil.
so much. This was a great conversation. We will definitely do more of these. I, I, l- yeah, I, if you're watching this and you're like, wow, they sure talked a whole lot about their culture. This is like what we do, and we're super proud of it. And Danine has done such an amazing job of creating, the extraordinary workplace that we have here. That's what we teach our clients to create.
Mhm.
We, as you say, we drink our own champagne here. Like we actually do the things that we're telling you to do.
Without a doubt. My family actually teases me. They tell me I drink the Kool-Aid all the time. So
All right. Well,
yes,
Danine, thank you so
thank
much.
you.
Thanks a lot. We'll talk again soon.
Sounds good. Take care.